The secrets of the deep dark, ancient cities, and the Warden's purpose. Close your eyes and let your breathing slow as we descend into the deepest, darkest corners of Minecraft's world. Tonight, we're embarking on a journey far below the surface, past the familiar caves where diamonds glimmer in torchlight, beyond the lava pools and abandoned mine shafts, down to a place where even the bravest explorers feel a primal unease. We're heading to the deep dark to explore the haunting ruins of the ancient cities and uncover the truth behind their most terrifying guardian, the Warden. As you drift towards sleep, imagine yourself standing at the entrance to a massive cavern. The air feels different here, heavier somehow, as if the weight of countless ages presses down from above. Your torch flickers, casting nervous shadows across walls that shouldn't exist this far underground. And then you see it, a patch of darkness that seems almost alive, pulsing with a faint, bioluminescent glow. Sculk, the very substance that transforms ordinary stone into something organic, something aware. This is where our story begins, in the silence and the shadows, where an entire civilization once thrived before vanishing without a trace. Every block we examine, every structure we explore, tells part of their story. And at the heart of it all waits the Warden, blind but all-seeing, a being of such raw power that even the game's creators warn you not to fight it, but to run. But what is it? Why does it exist? And what happened to the people who built these magnificent underground cities? The descent into darkness. The journey to the deep dark begins with understanding where you're going. This isn't just another cave system or biome. The deep dark generates exclusively in areas with low erosion values, typically beneath mountains, jagged peaks, frozen slopes, and meadows, places where water hasn't worn away the earth over millennia. It's found at some of the lowest points in Minecraft's overworld, around Y level -51, sitting just above bedrock itself. When you first enter the deep dark, the change is immediately noticeable. Natural light sources are almost entirely absent. There's virtually no glow lichen to guide your way, only the occasional Sculk catalyst casting its eerie blue-green luminescence into the darkness. The usual sounds of cave ambiance take on a different quality here, as if something in the stone itself is listening, waiting. What makes the deep dark truly unique is what doesn't spawn here. Under normal circumstances, hostile mobs don't generate naturally in this biome through the usual spawning mechanics. No zombies shamble through its corridors. No skeletons fire arrows from hidden alcoves. no creepers lurk in the shadows. However, if a naturally generated monster spawner happens to appear here, it can still spawn mobs, reminding us that even the deep dark's rules have exceptions. But for the most part, this absence of regular mob spawns creates an oppressive silence that feels more threatening than any monster. The designers at Mojang understood that true horror doesn't come from jump scares or overwhelming enemy numbers. It comes from anticipation, from the fear of what might happen, rather than what is happening. The ground beneath your feet is unlike anywhere else in Minecraft. Vast patches of Sculk spread across the floor like organic carpeting. Sculk veins creeping up walls and across ceilings. Sculk sensors dot the landscape, their tendrils waving gently as if tasting the air for vibrations. And scattered throughout, the Sculk shriekers stand like ancient alarms, waiting for the right trigger to summon something from the depths. As you move through the deep dark, treading carefully to avoid disturbing the sensors, you begin to notice structures in the distance. Massive walls of deep slate rising from the darkness. Corridors stretching away into shadow. The unmistakable signs of intentional construction on a scale that dwarfs anything else in the game. You've found it. An ancient city. The architecture of lost civilizations. Ancient cities are the largest structures in all of Minecraft, spanning approximately 220 blocks in each horizontal direction. They're not compact dungeons or simple ruins. They're sprawling palatial complexes that speak of a civilization with advanced engineering knowledge and vast resources. Every city generates at exactly Y level -51, the floor perfectly aligned as if the builders understood the geology of their world with mathematical precision. The moment you step into an ancient city, you're struck by the deliberate nature of its construction. Long corridors stretch away in multiple directions, their floors covered with 2-block deep layers of gray wool. This isn't decoration. Wool doesn't transmit vibrations through Sculk sensors. Every carpet, every wool block placed throughout these cities was a conscious choice made by people who understood the danger of making noise in this place. The hallways themselves are wider than they need to be, with ceilings that rise higher than human scale would require. Walking through these passages, you feel small, as if the city was built by beings larger than yourself, or perhaps designed to accommodate something that needed more space than the average person. The architectural inspiration draws from real-world ancient civilizations. The stepped platforms and geometric precision of Mayan temples, the grand scale and stone masonry of Roman construction. Blue, light blue, and cyan wool create rugs and floor patterns throughout the city, breaking up the oppressive gray deep slate. These colors might not be random choices. Looking at them, you could interpret them as representing water, sky, and life, all things absent from the deep dark. This raises questions about the builder's intentions. Were they reminders of a surface world the builders had left behind? Or were these cities always intended as underground settlements, with the colored wool serving as symbolic connections to a world they could no longer inhabit? The game doesn't tell us directly, but the consistent use of these specific colors throughout every ancient city suggests they held meaning for whoever placed them there. Off to the sides of the main corridors, you find smaller structures, ruins within ruins. These contain 1 or 2 loot chests, holding items that tell us something about what the inhabitants valued. Enchanted equipment suggests they had mastered the art of magical enhancement. Food items preserved for untold ages indicate knowledge of preservation techniques, and scattered throughout the chests are snowballs, an interesting choice that invites interpretation. Snowballs could serve as tools for making noise to distract whatever hunted in the dark, as the swift sneak enchantment and other stealth-focused items in the cities suggest the inhabitants moved carefully. Or perhaps they were preserved as reminders of ice and snow from a surface world far above. The game leaves this detail open to our understanding. The lighting throughout the city comes from soul lanterns and candles, not the traditional torches you'd expect. Soul lanterns require soul sand or soul soil to craft, materials typically found only in the Nether. This detail alone confirms that the builders of these cities had access to multiple dimensions, that they possessed the knowledge to create and use nether portals. They weren't primitive cave dwellers. They were interdimensional travelers. What drove them to build their greatest cities in the deepest, darkest place they could find remains one of the mysteries these ruins pose to us. Statues rise from various points in the city, their forms weathered and ancient. Some resemble the builders themselves, others depict unknown figures or abstract forms. Were these religious icons, memorials to the dead, or perhaps warning markers placed to remember something that should never be forgotten? The statues stand as silent witnesses to whatever catastrophe befell this place, their stone faces looking out over empty streets that once rang with voices and footsteps. As you explore deeper into the ancient city, you notice something else about the construction. Despite the grandeur, there are signs of hasty work, incomplete sections where construction seems to have stopped mid-project. corridors that end abruptly, bridges left unfinished. Whatever happened here, it happened while the city was still being built, or perhaps while it was being desperately expanded. The builders ran out of time. The portal that breathes. At the heart of every ancient city stands its most enigmatic feature, a massive frame structure that dominates the central chamber. Rising from a pit of blue soul fire, this construction bears what many players notice as a resemblance to the Warden's face, with a central opening lined with reinforced deep slate, a block so resilient it cannot be broken in survival mode. Players often call this the ancient city portal, though it leads nowhere and can't be activated by any known means. Whether it's a monument to failed ambition or deliberate abandonment, the structure invites endless speculation about its original purpose. The frame's proportions suggest it was designed with careful precision, measuring out in a way that could theoretically function as a portal, similar in concept to the end portal frames found in strongholds or the obsidian constructions that open gateways to the nether. But unlike those functional portals, this one remains inert. No combination of items or actions discovered so far will cause it to flicker to life. Mojang's developers have explicitly stated they won't be adding new dimensions to the game. Yet the presence of this portal-like structure has sparked countless theories among players about what it might have been intended for within the world's lore. The resemblance between this structure and the Warden's distinctive head shape has not gone unnoticed by the community. The reinforced deep slate forms an opening that mirrors what could be seen as a mouth, while the overall silhouette echoes the creature's form. This parallel raises fascinating questions. Was this structure built as a shrine to the Warden? A warning about it? The architectural connection between the two suggests some deliberate link, though what that link might be remains open to interpretation. Standing before this monument, you can see the soul fire burning in the pit below, those haunting blue flames that mark the presence of soul sand or soul soil. These flames serve as more than just atmosphere. They're evidence that whoever built this place had extensive knowledge of soul-based materials. Throughout the city, soul lanterns light the walkways. Soul torches mark important locations. The consistent use of soul-based lighting throughout suggests the builders had developed sophisticated methods for working with these materials, possibly viewing souls as a form of energy that could be harnessed and contained. The scale of their implementation indicates this was fundamental to how they built their civilization, rather than a minor curiosity. But there's something more to this central structure, something hidden from casual observation. The wooden bridge that spans from the portal to one wall seems ordinary enough. A simple crossing point over the soul fire pit. Yet beneath this bridge, in a recessed area at the base of the portal structure, lies a secret. The entrance to a hidden chamber, sealed behind a door that doesn't look like a door at all. This secret has been quietly added by Mojang, without fanfare or explanation. The developers didn't mention it in patch notes, didn't draw attention to it in update videos. They let players discover it on their own. And those who have found it have been amazed by what it reveals about the ancient builders' capabilities and their desperate final days. The portal frame raises as many questions as it answers. Modern players who discover the secret entrance and venture inside find themselves in a series of chambers that show the builders possessed remarkable technical sophistication. The hidden rooms contain something the builders valued enough to protect and conceal, even as circumstances around them deteriorated. They contain carefully constructed demonstrations of redstone principles and mechanisms, a form of preserved knowledge. The hidden chambers of knowledge. Beneath the portal frame, accessible only through a secret door that blends perfectly with the surrounding wall, lies a network of hidden basements. These chambers represent some of the most sophisticated construction in all of Minecraft, not because of their size or grandeur, but because of what they contain. Naturally generating redstone circuitry that serves as a teaching tool for anyone who finds it. There are 3 variant configurations of these hidden chambers, and each ancient city generates with one of the 3 possibilities. This randomization means that even experienced explorers can't be certain what they'll find, adding an element of discovery to each city they locate. But all 3 variants share common elements that tell us about the builders' priorities and their understanding of technology. The secret entrance is located at the base of the portal structure, underneath the wooden bridge that connects the city center to the outer wall. The door itself is a marvel of engineering. Sticky pistons arranged to pull away blocks and create an opening, then push them back into place to reseal the passage. The mechanism that controls this door varies between the 3 variants, and this variation teaches us that the builders experimented with different methods of achieving the same goal. In the first variant, a chiseled deep slate block sits prominently in front of the frame. This block marks the trigger point. When a player makes a vibration near it, walking, jumping, even dropping an item, a Sculk sensor hidden within the redstone circuitry detects the vibration and sends a signal to the piston door. The door opens, revealing the chambers below. But there's more cleverness here. A pulse extender has been incorporated into the circuit, ensuring the door remains open for exactly 180 game ticks after the Sculk sensor is activated, giving the visitor time to enter before the pistons seal the entrance again. The second variant uses a more sophisticated approach. The circuit includes a signal strength filter that responds only to vibrations of a certain intensity. This isn't just a door that opens when you walk nearby. It's a door that requires a specific action, a particular kind of noise or vibration to trigger. The builders who designed this weren't content with simple security. They wanted controlled access, ensuring that only those who understood the system could enter. The third variant involves a wooden chest positioned above the doorway, visible from the bridge. Inside the chest sits a single item, either a golden apple or a golden carrot. The mechanism here is particularly ingenious. When you remove the item and attempt to eat it while standing in front of the chest, the door below activates. The food item isn't actually consumed, but the act of trying to eat it triggers a Sculk sensor that's been positioned to detect that specific action. It's a test, a puzzle that requires the visitor to think about what the chest and its contents might be signaling. Once inside the hidden chambers, you find yourself in a laboratory of sorts, a place where the ancient builders conducted their research and left behind evidence of their work. The rooms are divided into sections, each containing a different redstone contraption designed to demonstrate a specific principle or technique. One room features an array of redstone lamps connected by dust and repeaters, showing how signals propagate through circuits and how timing can be controlled. Another displays a contraption built with wool blocks, demonstrating how some materials block redstone signals, while others allow them to pass through. A third chamber showcases interaction with target blocks and lecterns, teaching how different inputs can be detected and processed. These aren't arbitrary constructions or decorative elements. They function as demonstrations, preserved examples of redstone principles that anyone who finds them can study. What motivated the builders to create these teaching contraptions is left to our interpretation. Perhaps they knew circumstances were turning against them and wanted to pass on their understanding to whoever came after. Perhaps these were simply part of how they taught their own people. The deliberate preservation and protection of these circuits, sealed behind sophisticated piston doors, suggests they held significance, knowledge deemed worthy of protecting, even as other priorities may have demanded attention. The contraptions reveal that the builders had mastered signal strength filtering, pulse extension, conditional logic, and sophisticated timing mechanisms. They understood how to work with Sculk sensors, integrating the organic, vibration-detecting technology into their mechanical systems. The secret chambers prove that the builders didn't fear the Sculk. They studied it, learned to harness it, and incorporated it into their most important constructions. What's particularly poignant about these hidden chambers is their location. The builders placed them beneath the portal, the structure at the heart of their city. Whatever the portal represented, escape, power, connection to another realm, the knowledge of how to build and understand was deemed worthy of protection right beneath it. The portal may have failed or been deliberately shut down, but the knowledge, the ability to create and understand, was preserved for future generations. Walking through these chambers, you can almost see the builders working here in better times, testing circuits, refining designs, teaching their apprentices. The furnaces in some versions of the basement still contain fuel, as if someone stepped away, expecting to return momentarily. The redstone dust has settled in perfectly preserved patterns, unmoved by time or decay. These rooms weren't abandoned in chaos or panic. They were sealed deliberately, carefully, with the hope that someone, someday, would open them and learn. The living darkness. But the ancient cities aren't just stone and redstone. They're infested with something that transforms the very nature of the deep dark. Sculk. This dark, organic material spreads throughout the city, and the biome like a living infection, covering floors, climbing walls, and consuming everything it touches. Understanding Sculk is essential to understanding what happened here, because Sculk isn't just a block type or a hazard. It's a character in this story, perhaps the most important one besides the Warden itself. Sculk has an unsettling biological appearance despite being a block. Its surface writhes with animation. Spots of bioluminescent cyan light pulsing across its surface in patterns that suggest neural activity or the firing of synapses. When you stand on Sculk, you can hear it making subtle, organic sounds, soft breathing, almost imperceptible whispers, the suggestion of something alive beneath your feet. The developers were very deliberate about this. They wanted Sculk to feel wrong, to trigger an instinctive unease in players. The name itself comes from Sculk, meaning to keep out of sight with sinister or cowardly motives. This linguistic choice reveals how the developers thought about this material. It's not neutral terrain or even simple corruption. It's hiding, lurking, waiting with malevolent intent. Sculk spreads through a specific mechanism tied to death and experience. At the center of any Sculk patch, you'll find a Sculk catalyst, a special block that serves as the heart of the growth. When any mob or player dies within 8 blocks of a Sculk catalyst, something remarkable and disturbing happens. Instead of the creature's body dropping experience orbs that float in the air, the catalyst consumes those orbs directly. The death is converted into Sculk charges, units of energy that course through the Sculk network, like electricity through circuits. These Sculk charges flow from block to block, spreading across Sculk surfaces in a process called Sculk bloom. Every game tick. The charges move to adjacent blocks, following the path of the Sculk network. When they reach non-Sculk blocks, they convert them. Dirt becomes Sculk, stone becomes Sculk. Even deep slate submits to the transformation. The Sculk spreads outward from the catalyst, fed by death, growing stronger with each life it consumes. The conversion follows specific rules. Soft, easily breakable blocks transform readily, while harder materials like ores and obsidian resist the spread. But the Sculk is patient. Given enough death, enough experience to convert into charges, it will eventually cover vast areas. And as it spreads, it doesn't just convert passive blocks. 9% of the time, when Sculk grows, it generates a Sculk sensor. 1% of the time, it creates a Sculk shrieker. Sculk sensors are the eyes and ears of this living network. Their tendrils wave constantly, detecting any vibration within range. Footsteps, breaking blocks, opening chests, even the sound of eating food. When they detect vibrations, they emit redstone signals, alerting other systems to the presence of something moving in the darkness. The ancient builders learned to work with these sensors, incorporating them into their redstone circuits, using the Sculk's own sensory capabilities for their purposes. But Sculk shriekers are different. These are alarms, warning systems that escalate with each triggering. The first time you activate a naturally generated shrieker, nothing happens except a chilling sound, a scream that echoes through the stone. The second time, the scream grows more desperate. The third time, urgency fills the air. But the fourth time you trigger a shrieker, the response is catastrophic. The ground begins to shake. Soul particles rise from the Sculk, and the Warden emerges. The mechanics of Sculk spreading raise important questions about what happened in the ancient cities. The natural generation of Sculk throughout the deep dark biome wasn't a random occurrence. Sculk catalysts, which are found in the deep dark and drop when Wardens are killed, are the source of all Sculk growth. The presence of so much Sculk throughout the ancient cities and the surrounding area implies massive amounts of death occurring near these catalysts, countless creatures, and possibly people dying in these locations, with their experience converted into Sculk charges that fed the growth until it covered vast expanses. Based on the cities being filled with soul-based technology, soul lanterns, soul torches, soul fire, we can infer that these people had developed sophisticated methods for working with the energy released when living things die. Whether they created the Sculk catalysts themselves as a way to more efficiently convert death into usable energy, or whether they discovered Sculk and attempted to harness it, remains uncertain. What we can observe is that Sculk responds to death by spreading, converting nearby blocks into more Sculk, creating an ever-expanding network. However, Sculk came to be here, its spread would have posed serious problems. Sculk grows indiscriminately once it begins. It doesn't distinguish between desired targets and everything else in its path. Looking at the city's design now, a pattern emerges. The builders covered floors extensively with wool to prevent vibrations from traveling. They used carpets and layered wool blocks throughout the corridors. Since wool doesn't transmit vibrations to Sculk sensors, this suggests they were dealing with a vibration detection system, either one they had created or one that came with the Sculk itself. The sheer amount of wool covering every walking surface implies this wasn't a minor concern, but a fundamental adaptation to living in this environment. Looking at the city now, you can see evidence of adaptation everywhere. The builders covered every floor with wool to muffle footsteps. They relied on soul lanterns for light throughout. The architecture suggests people living with constant awareness of sound, of vibration, of the need to move carefully. Whether this represents their technology turning against them or an intentional defense system they built, the result is clear. They spent significant effort and resources adapting their entire city for silent movement. The Sculk veins that crawl up walls and across ceilings show the advance of the growth. The patches of Sculk covering what were once pristine deep slate halls indicate areas where the spread was extensive. And the Sculk shriekers positioned throughout the city form what appears to be an alarm network, though whether this was installed by the builders or is simply how Sculk shriekers naturally function remains one of the mysteries of these ruins. The blind sentinel. When a Sculk shrieker has been triggered 4 times by naturally generated shriekers in the deep dark, the ground splits open and something emerges. Not a creature that spawns around through normal means, not a boss that waits in a specific location, something that tunnels up from deep below, drawn by the alarm, responding to a call that echoes through the Sculk network. The Warden. Standing almost 3 blocks tall, the Warden towers over players and most other mobs in Minecraft. Its body seems formed from Sculk itself, dark tissue shot through with glowing cyan patterns that pulse in rhythm with a heartbeat audible when it's near. But the most striking feature, the detail that defines the entire encounter, is its face. Where eyes should be, there is nothing. The Warden is completely blind. This blindness isn't a weakness. It's the entire point of the Warden's design. Unlike every other hostile mob in Minecraft, the Warden doesn't hunt by sight. It navigates through a combination of vibration detection, sense of smell, and echolocation. The Sculk-like sensors that adorn its head constantly wave and twist, picking up the slightest disturbances in the environment. When you move near the Warden, when you break a block or open a chest, when you do anything that creates vibrations, the Warden knows exactly where you are. The developers at Mojang were explicit about their intentions with the Warden. This isn't a mob you're meant to fight. In a game where combat is central to progression, where defeating enemies and conquering challenges is expected, the Warden represents something different. It's a natural disaster, a force of nature that you survive by avoiding confrontation. The developers compared it to encountering a tornado. You don't run toward it with a sword drawn. You run away and seek shelter. The Warden's attack power reinforces this philosophy. It deals massive melee damage, among the highest of any mob in the entire game. A player wearing full netherite armor can survive its normal melee attacks, but will take severe damage with each hit, enough that only a few direct strikes will prove fatal. Its normal attacks involve swinging its arms down with crushing force. But when you try to escape by building up, by using the classic Minecraft strategy of towering above danger, the Warden reveals its sonic boom attack. This attack is unlike anything else in the game. The Warden opens its chest, revealing the soul-like essence within, and releases a blast of sonic energy that travels instantaneously to the target. There's no projectile to dodge, no time to react. The sonic boom pierces through any obstacle, ignoring walls, shields, and armor. The only defense is the resistance effect from items like golden apples or totems of undying. When the Warden decides you need to be eliminated, distance and barriers mean nothing. But the Warden's most oppressive ability isn't its damage output. It's the darkness effect. Every 6 seconds, the Warden inflicts this status effect on all players within a 20-block radius. Darkness dramatically reduces visibility, shrinking your field of view to nearly nothing, plunging you into near total blackness, punctuated only by the pulsing of the Warden's glowing patterns. In darkness, you can barely see the Warden coming. You can't navigate effectively. You're reduced to stumbling blind while a blind hunter pursues you with perfect precision. The heartbeat sound that accompanies darkness grows faster as the Warden becomes more agitated. These heartbeats emanate from the souls visible in the Warden's chest, that cluster of cyan lights that suggests multiple trapped essences rather than a single entity. According to developers, these souls are crucial to the Warden's lore, though they've been deliberately vague about the details. The souls aren't just decorative, they're integral to understanding what the Warden is and why it exists. The Warden's behavior follows specific patterns. It tracks anger levels toward entities that cause vibrations, building up rage from 0 to 150. Each vibration adds to its anger, with projectiles adding less than direct interactions. Once the Warden has identified a target, it pursues relentlessly, prioritizing the entity it considers most suspicious rather than simply the closest. This intelligence makes it far more dangerous than a mob that simply attacks whatever is nearest. When the Warden can't detect any targets, when it hasn't sensed vibrations or smelled players for 60 seconds, it behaves in a way that's almost more unsettling than when it's hunting. It begins to dig. The ground opens up. The Warden descends, and the Sculk closes over it, as if the creature is returning home, burrowing back into the material from which it emerged. The Warden doesn't die or despawn in the traditional sense. It withdraws, sinking back into the darkness to wait for the next alarm. The design evolution of the Warden reveals how much thought went into creating this creature. Early iterations had different names: the Shade, the Stalker, the Hollowed. One particularly unsettling design showed a creature with white flesh full of holes, intended to trigger trypophobia. The developers experimented with different abilities, including one where the Warden could fold up and crawl through one by one tunnels like a nightmare that could follow you anywhere. Another proposed ability would have caused players to experience inverted controls, making escape nearly impossible. These ideas were ultimately toned down or removed, not because they weren't effective at creating fear, but because they were perhaps too effective. The developers wanted the Warden to be scary while remaining within the boundaries of what Minecraft's tone could support. The final design captures horror through implication and atmosphere rather than explicit grotesqueness. The connection between the Warden and the ancient builders becomes a subject of much speculation when you examine the evidence. The central portal structure in every ancient city shares visual similarities with the Warden's head shape. The city's architecture features wider corridors and higher ceilings than would be strictly necessary for human-scale inhabitants. The extensive wool carpeting and vibration prevention measures show the builders were protecting themselves from something that detected movement through sound. And the Sculk network, which summons the Warden through its shriekers, spreads from catalysts that drop when Wardens are killed, creating an interesting circular relationship. Several theories attempt to explain these connections. One possibility is that the Warden came from another dimension, brought through when the portal structure was activated. If creatures like the Warden were natural inhabitants of a Sculk-filled realm, opening a gateway to that place could have allowed them to enter this world. The portal structure standing inactive now might represent a successful attempt to seal that gateway after realizing what they had unleashed. Alternatively, the builders might have deliberately created the Warden as a guardian for their cities and secrets. They clearly had advanced knowledge of Sculk mechanics and soul manipulation, as evidenced by the soul-based lighting and the Sculk sensors integrated into their redstone systems. Creating a guardian entity from Sculk, powered by souls bound within its chest, would align with their demonstrated capabilities. Whether such a creation then exceeded their control or simply performed its guardian function too well remains open to interpretation. The sound of endings. Hidden in chests throughout every ancient city are fragments of a broken record, 9 pieces that can be assembled into a complete music disc. This is Disc 5, and unlike the pleasant ambient music of most Minecraft discs, it tells a story through sound, the story of the ancient city's final hours. The disc begins with static, the sound of damaged recording equipment struggling to capture what's happening. Then comes a rumble, deep and ominous, followed by a strange warping effect, as if time itself is being fast-forwarded. Someone is moving quickly through underground corridors, their footsteps echoing off stone walls. These aren't the cautious, muffled footsteps of someone trying to hide. This is someone running. You hear them breathing hard, exhausted, terrified. The sound of their movement creates a vivid picture. Long corridors, the acoustics of vast chambers, the specific resonance of deep slate and stone. They're running through the ancient city. And they're not alone. A lever is pulled. A door creaks open. These sounds don't match any standard Minecraft audio files, suggesting they were created specifically for this disc. The person has found something, activated something. There's a pause, a moment of quiet anticipation. And then comes a sound that many players interpret as a portal igniting, a distinctive activation chime. What happens next on the disc connects to the deep dark in unmistakable ways. The portal sound, whether it represents the ancient city's central structure or something else entirely, is followed by sounds every deep, dark explorer recognizes. The clicking of Sculk sensors detecting vibrations. And then the earth-shaking roar of the Warden. This sequence of sounds can be interpreted in multiple ways. One reading is that activating whatever structure produced the portal sound created vibrations that triggered the sensors. The shriekers then activated their alarm, summoning the Warden. Whatever the person recording was trying to accomplish encountered this catastrophic response. But we should be careful about assuming too much. Disc 5 gives us sounds without explicit context, and while the sequence is suggestive, the exact events being recorded remain deliberately ambiguous. But there's more to Disc 5 than just the ending. Earlier sections include the sound of bubbling lava, suggesting movement through dangerous areas of the deep dark. There's a distinct crystalline sound similar to amethyst geodes, indicating the person passed through multiple biomes in their flight. At one point, pleasant ambient music plays for about 23 seconds, a strange interlude that doesn't match the rest of the disc's desperate tone. This might be corruption from the disc's fragmented state, pieces of other recordings accidentally included during the reconstruction process. The ambient music segment is followed by more running, more desperate movement. The person recording wasn't just making their way to whatever structure they activated. They were fleeing from something, moving with urgency toward their destination. The nature of the threat remains unspecified on the disk. Attempting to piece together a timeline from Disk 5 requires acknowledging we're working with fragments of evidence. One possible interpretation: the ancient builders faced some form of catastrophic threat, leading them to retreat to massive underground cities prepared in the deep dark. They brought their knowledge, their technology, their expertise with redstone and soul-based materials. The portal-like structure at the city center might have been intended as an escape route, though whether it ever functioned or what it was meant to connect to remains unknown. What we can observe more confidently is that Sculk spread throughout these cities. Whether the builders created it, discovered it, or it arrived through some other means, its presence transformed the environment. The builders adapted their architecture and behavior to deal with vibration-sensitive Sculk sensors, covering floors with wool and moving carefully. The shriekers and the Warden became part of this environment, though whether as a security system, an invasive threat, or something else isn't definitively established by the evidence. In what the disk seems to capture as its final moments, someone attempted to activate the central structure. The recording on Disk 5 might be from a scout, an individual who went ahead while others waited. Or it might be the last survivor trying a final, desperate measure. The vibrations from this activation triggered the detection systems throughout the area. The shriekers screamed their alarm. The Warden emerged. And whatever was being attempted ended there, leaving only this fragmentary recording scattered across multiple chests for future explorers to piece together. The fact that Disk 5 exists in fragments invites interpretation. The disk wasn't lost as a complete item that deteriorated naturally. It was broken into 9 pieces, deliberately scattered across different chests throughout each city. Why? One possibility is that survivors, or the builders themselves, chose to fragment this recording, ensuring anyone who wanted to hear the complete account would need to thoroughly explore the ruins and risk the same dangers. Another is that the fragmentation happened through some other means during whatever catastrophe befell the cities. The game doesn't explicitly answer this question. Finding all 9 fragments requires visiting multiple areas of an ancient city, opening numerous chests, risking detection by the sensors and shriekers that still function after countless years. The process of reconstructing Disk 5 mirrors the process of reconstructing the history of the ancient cities, gathering scattered pieces of evidence, assembling them into a coherent whole, and finally hearing the truth about what happened here. When you play the completed disc, you're not just listening to ambient sound effects. You're hearing what appears to be a recording of desperate movement through underground structures, ending with the activation of something that drew the Warden's attention. Whether this represents the last moments of an entire civilization, or simply one tragic incident, the disc creates an atmosphere of urgency and failure. The Warden's roar at the disc's end stands as one of the most ominous sounds in Minecraft, marking the conclusion of whatever was being attempted in that ancient place. The pattern of catastrophe. When you step back and examine all the evidence, the architecture, the Sculk, the Warden, the portal structure, the disc, certain patterns emerge that players and theorists have used to construct broader narratives. It's important to note that Minecraft doesn't provide explicit lore or confirmed storylines. What follows is one interpretation among many, based on environmental storytelling and the structures found throughout the game. Throughout Minecraft's overworld, observant players find structures that suggest a once widespread civilization. Villages indicate organized communities. Desert and jungle temples point to religious or cultural practices. Ocean monuments demonstrate advanced construction capabilities, extending even underwater. The strongholds, those massive underground fortresses, containing end portal frames, prove whoever built them had discovered dimensional travel and actively pursued it. Based on these scattered pieces of evidence, many players theorize about connections between these structures. One popular interpretation centers on what happened to cause such a civilization to leave behind only ruins. The theory that has gained considerable traction in the community involves the Wither, that three-headed flying boss that must be deliberately constructed by placing Wither skeleton skulls on soul sand. The Wither's artificial nature suggests it wasn't always a random threat, but rather something that was created, possibly as a weapon or tool that then exceeded its creator's control. If we follow this speculative thread, a surface world threatened by uncontrolled withers would push any surviving civilization to find refuge. The withers' devastating attacks and explosive projectiles would make above-ground life extremely dangerous. Some members of this theoretical civilization might have fled to the end using the stronghold's portal frames. Others could have devolved into simpler societies. The villagers we encounter today, who seem to possess fragments of advanced knowledge, but lack the full capabilities their structures suggest their ancestors had. And still others might have descended to the deepest possible levels to build elaborate cities where threats from above couldn't easily follow. Under this interpretation, the ancient cities were conceived as shelters, perhaps temporary at first. The portal-like structure at each city's center could have been an attempt at creating an entirely new escape route, not to the end or nether, but to somewhere else entirely. The redstone laboratories beneath these structures might indicate active research into portal technology, though whether they ever succeeded in activating these gateways remains unknown. The role of Sculk in whatever happened next remains one of the great mysteries. Whether introduced through portal experiments, deliberately created, or discovered and unsuccessfully harnessed, Sculk became a major factor in these cities' fate. The growth patterns we observe today, Sculk covering vast areas, fed by death near catalysts, suggest something catastrophic occurred involving massive loss of life. The builders demonstrated clear adaptation to living with Sculk sensors, covering every floor with wool for silent movement. The Shrieker network throughout each city could represent a security system they installed, or it might simply be how Sculk Shriekers naturally distribute themselves as the Sculk spreads. The Warden's relationship to all of this, whether guardian, invader, or consequence, remains deliberately ambiguous in the game's presentation. What we can say with certainty is that the ancient cities now stand empty. No inhabitants remain. The Sculk has spread extensively. The Warden emerges when enough Shriekers are triggered, and the portal structures remain inactive, their purpose fulfilled, abandoned, or never achieved. The cities preserve fragments of advanced knowledge in their redstone contraptions, while serving as elaborate tombs for whatever civilization built them. The person recording Disc 5 was likely among the very last, making a final attempt to activate the portal when all other options had failed. They failed, and the cities were left exactly as we find them: vast, empty, covered in Sculk, with inactive portals standing as monuments to desperate hope and terrible failure. What makes this tragedy even more poignant is how close they came to success. The redstone laboratories show they understood the principles involved. The portal structure is complete, perfectly formed, lacking only the activation method they never fully discovered. If they had succeeded, if they had opened the gateway to another dimension and escaped, Minecraft's entire history would be different. But they failed, and their failure left behind the deep dark and the ancient cities as warnings to anyone who comes after. The modern meaning. For players discovering ancient cities today, the ruins serve multiple purposes. On a practical level, they offer valuable loot. The swift sneak enchantment found nowhere else, echo shards for crafting recovery compasses, and various other treasures. The challenge of navigating the deep dark and avoiding the Warden provides a unique gameplay experience focused on stealth and environmental awareness rather than combat. But on a deeper level, the ancient cities represent something more significant. They're Minecraft's most developed piece of environmental storytelling, a complex narrative told entirely through architecture, mechanics, and scattered clues. The story of the ancient builders, their achievements and their failure, mirrors real human history in meaningful ways. Every great civilization eventually falls, and the ancient cities in Minecraft capture this truth through their environmental storytelling. The game shows us that technological advancement and knowledge don't guarantee survival. These builders, whoever they were in the game's implied lore, mastered dimensional travel, developed sophisticated redstone systems, and worked with soul-based materials. Yet the cities stand abandoned. What makes the teaching laboratories beneath the portal structures particularly interesting is their apparent purpose. Rather than simply securing valuable resources, the builders created functional demonstrations of redstone principles. This suggests they valued knowledge preservation, creating tutorials that would persist long after they were gone. Whether this was done anticipating their end or simply as part of their cultural practices, the result is the same. Future visitors can learn from their work. When you enter an ancient city and carefully navigate its halls, when you discover the secret chambers and examine the redstone demonstrations within, you're engaging with this preserved knowledge. The fact that Mojang implemented these teaching laboratories subtly, without extensive explanation, shows an appreciation for environmental storytelling and allowing players to make their own discoveries. The Warden, in this environment, functions as more than a gameplay challenge. Its presence ensures the ruins remain dangerous to explore, that accessing this preserved knowledge requires courage and careful planning. Whether you interpret it as a corrupted guardian, an invader from another realm, or something else entirely, it has effectively protected these cities for ages, deterring casual exploration and ensuring only determined adventurers uncover what lies within. Modern players who brave the deep dark have different approaches to these ruins. Some focus on the practical aspects, collecting swift sneak enchantments, gathering echo shards, looting chests while avoiding the Warden. Others build elaborate farms using Sculk catalysts, turning the death-to-energy conversion mechanics into automated systems. And some take time to study the ruins carefully, examining the architecture, reconstructing Disk 5, discovering the hidden redstone chambers, and piecing together their own interpretations of what might have happened here. There's something notable about Minecraft, including content like this. In a game primarily known for creative building and resource gathering, the ancient cities introduce a different tone, one of mystery, danger, and implied tragedy. They show that even in a blocky world where death usually means respawning, and most challenges can be overcome with better equipment, there are places that tell stories of absolute failure, of ambitions that ended in darkness, of knowledge preserved, but civilizations lost. The deep dark and its ancient cities can also be read as commentary on the unintended consequences of creation. The builders, in the interpretations players construct, may have created or experimented with Sculk, a material that spreads based on death. They had clearly developed methods for working with soul-based materials. They built or attempted to build portal technology to reach other dimensions. Each of these pursuits, while demonstrating remarkable advancement, came with risks that may not have been fully understood. This theme of technological advancement outpacing wisdom in its application resonates beyond the game itself. For younger players, the ancient cities might simply be challenging dungeons with valuable rewards. But for those who engage with the environmental storytelling, who examine the details and construct narratives from the evidence, they represent something more layered. Meditations on ambition, failure, preservation of knowledge, and the echoes that civilizations leave behind even after disappearing. Conclusion. As you drift toward sleep, imagine yourself standing in the central chamber of an ancient city one last time. The soul fire flickers in its pit, casting blue light across the portal structure that looms above. The frame's resemblance to the Warden's head stands frozen in architecture. The Sculk spreads silently across the floor, pulsing with cyan light. A living system that has outlasted whatever civilization once walked these halls. The story of the ancient cities and the Warden's purpose is ultimately a story told through environmental details rather than explicit narrative. The game presents us with elaborate ruins, sophisticated redstone systems, soul-based technology, and a formidable guardian, then invites us to interpret what we find. Different players construct different narratives from the same evidence. And that's part of what makes these structures so compelling. What we know for certain is that these cities were built with remarkable skill, then abandoned. The Warden now patrols the halls, blind but perfectly aware, powered by souls visible in its chest, serving whatever purpose it was designed or evolved to serve. The portal structures remain inactive. Their function, whether failed, fulfilled, or never achieved, lost to time. And the story of what happened here has been encoded in fragments, in architecture that speaks of adaptation to living with Sculk sensors, in redstone contraptions preserved beneath the city center, in the 9 pieces of a broken disk scattered across multiple chests. The portal remains inactive, standing as the centerpiece of every ancient city. Whether Mojang will ever activate these structures, or whether they'll remain forever sealed, we can only speculate. For now, they stand as monuments to ambition and mystery, encouraging players to imagine what they might have been intended for and what might have prevented their activation. Until then, the ancient cities wait in the deep dark, vast and empty, covered in Sculk, guarded by the Warden. They preserve questions about who built them, what drove them to such depths, what purpose the central structures served, and what ultimately led to their abandonment. These mysteries, rather than diminishing the experience, enrich it, giving players space to construct their own interpretations and meanings from the evidence scattered throughout these magnificent ruins. If you've enjoyed this journey through the secrets of the deep dark and the ancient cities, consider subscribing to Slumber Gamer for more explorations of gaming lore and mysteries. Like this video if you'd like to see more Minecraft content, and let me know in the comments what other gaming secrets you'd like me to uncover for you as you drift off to sleep. Sweet dreams, and may your own explorations of the ancient cities lead to discoveries both valuable and enlightening. Good night.